Guys, this latest chapter of Black Clover chapter 300 was incredible. This arc of the story just keeps getting better and better. And with the previous chapter, Noelle's most powerful transformation, Saint Valkyrie dress, had come undone, thus eliminating their only means of defeating the fiend that is Megecula. But at the same time, even if this was not the case, it is doubtful that Noelle would have been able to even land a single hit, considering the overwhelming spread of Megecula's Decaying World spell that had at that point consumed the entirety of the battlefield. The situation had taken a turn for the worst. But just then, Gaja would send a bit of harmless lightning magic over to Noelle and smile at her with blood dripping from his mouth as he'd previously been impaled by his now devilish queen. And he would proceed to stun her with an ever gentle jolt to the head and remove himself from this impalement. In truth, he was unqualified to be a spirit guardian as far as he was concerned, as more than the Heart Kingdom itself, what he truly desired to protect was his queen, Lolopechka. He would not allow them to kill her, nor would he allow her to kill. And it was for this reason that he wouldn't let this wound that she had given him be his end. Because of this, he would convert his very life energy into magical power and crush the source of all its misery, the dreaded devil, before them. As in a flash, he would close the gap between himself and Megecula and use the mighty ultimate lightning magic, Apocalypra Astrauza, straight up incinerating the monster's form, as not even the Decaying World could completely eliminate this overwhelming power. And furthermore, recognizing this to be her chance to pierce Megecula's heart with what little Saint Stage magic she could manage, Noelle began running forwards. But just then, beyond the dust and debris, it was clear that their dreaded foe still remained. And with this latest chapter, as the dust cleared, Megecula would express her fascination with this sort of life force expenditure for the sake of enhanced magical power, as it far exceeded her own expectations. And I think that this is quite possibly the most terrifying thing about Megecula, her fascination. Knowing that all curses in the world derive their origins from her, it is to be expected that she is a bit of a tinkerer and dangerously inquisitive. As Gaja fell before her, she would commend his efforts as they showed her something new and unprecedented. From here, we would see her by her lonesome, as apparently the entirety of her body is coated with a super high speed regeneration curse, and so suddenly Dante's capabilities feel pretty insignificant. But just beyond this, Megecula's wings were now exposed as well, and here we see a number of eyes on them. And so it seems like a common trait among such high-ranking devils is the possession of wings. Zagreed had mouths on his wings, Zenon sports a somewhat skeletal framework around his wings, Lilith's were icy, Nama's were a bit webbed and weathered, and even Dante suddenly had wings at 100%. And although there are many examples here, as we can see from the middle tier and bottom of the barrel devils, wings are not possessed by all of them. And so at that, ASTA'S Devil Libe just becomes that much more fascinating to me. But yeah, in seeing the state of Gaja, Undyne would emerge and call out to him, but moments later, Megecula's curse magic would again begin to get the better of her form as she would begin retching in pain. As once more, Megecula would express her own superiority and the failings of Saint Stage magic when faced with her own. Really and truly, the situation they were all in was absolutely horrendous. Rill and Charlotte were straight up destroyed, Gaja was not only bleeding out, but he had expended his literal life force to pull off that last attack. Undyne was now corrupted by curse magic and was having trouble maintaining her form, and the abyssal hydras of a devil Lolopechka were still out and about. Yet even still, despite being faced by these virtually insurmountable odds, Noelle would call upon her own power. This was no longer spiritually infused magics, but her own normal water magic. A power which would be utterly devoured by Megecula's curse magic to such an extent that it would actually damage Noelle in its removal. And it was all too clear to Megecula that this was done in a fit of desperation. And it is this sort of human exercise in futility that so thoroughly fascinated her. It was perplexing as something she couldn't possibly fathom, and she would furthermore wonder if this was to blame for the rare instances of human magic exceeding her own expectations. But to an extent, it didn't really matter that much considering no human magic could ever defeat her within the bounds of Decaying World. And honestly man, remember that this is Megecula only at a third of her manifestation. These Supreme Devils are really nothing to play around with. But speaking of devil rankings, Megecula would explain that a devil would never challenge or go against another devil of higher ranking than themselves, that there is really no purpose to such a meaningless effort. And so from her perspective, humans were the weird ones for risking their lives when nothing else matters if you die. And she'd furthermore bring up a few examples of confusing events, beginning with Asier Silva, Noelle's mother, who'd risked herself due to a love of her children, Gaja, who had given his life for the sake of the queen he had sworn himself to, and finally, Noelle, who was resisting with nothing to cling on to beyond the fallacy of hope. And it's this conversation especially that has made Megecula my favorite devil thus far. And that's because of just how alien she is. Her mentality is so far removed from what it means to be human that rather than coming across as evil, she is more or less horrifically indifferent. And as far as I'm concerned, indifference is far worse than hatred. And now on the inside, Noelle knew she had no chance of winning here, but even still, she rose up to her feet, now telling Megecula that because it was a human thing, there was no need for her to understand. And now, being influenced by the prior sentiments of Asta, what was even to her at the time pretty crazy, Noelle, like a badass, would say that even if you have no chance of winning, there are just some things that a person has to do. In truth, she wanted to just break down and cry here, and how could you blame her? She is faced with her mother's killer, the being whose influence sent her down such a spiraling path of sadness and despair for the majority of her life, an entity which now stood to destroy everything and everyone she cares about now, with all of her nearby allies on the verge of death. But despite this, she would express that if she resists, she may not win. But if she doesn't try at all, she will not win. That at the end of the day, the true strength of a human is the ability to never give up. A core shonen value that is always so motivating, but even still, Megecula was unmoved by this ridiculous sentiment. She was still intrigued, but not enough to derail her interests, and so she decided to proceed. As just then, she would utter the dreadful words, curse-wording magic, exploding life. And if you remember, Vanica used this to blow up her own followers, as she would then use this on Lolopechka, and she planned to do so and ensure the peaceful and swift deaths of everyone in the castle. A horrific intention indeed, which I feel solidifies her stance towards her fellow devils and pretty much everything else. As you might expect, she cares only for herself and nothing else. And with this, the process would begin, and the most sinister of grins would spread across her accursed face at the thought of fully manifesting. Noelle would now desperately call out to Lolopechka, her friend, with a hand extended as she hopelessly ran forwards. But just as she did this, her hand was slapped as if being subbed out. And to Megecula's surprise, another entity had entered the fray with expediency, despite her decaying world spell still being up, now pulling a blade from their grimoire and exuding a particular power. Now with their blade touching upon the stomach of Lolopechka, they would express relief in making it just in time. It was Asta, and with a bright smile on his face as he held onto an incapacitated Lolopechka. He'd call out to Noelle, happy to see her safe and sound, and clearly she was the furthest thing from that, but as the tears flowed from her eyes, she was able to smile again as hope had arrived. But on the flip side, you had a now perturbed Megecula with a scornful expression on her face, and that was the chapter. So with the previous chapter discussion, I expressed that I did not want Asta to intervene here, although it is very clear that this would be a fight that he is actually built to take on for the sake of Noelle getting her moment. But now looking at things, he needs to be here. Nobody else can stand a chance against the Decaying World, and so his presence is sort of necessary. With that being said, however, a joint effort between him and Noelle would be amazing. I wouldn't be surprised if Devil Union mode is still on cooldown, and so to make up for that, he and Noelle team up to put an end to Megecula. And I feel like that would be satisfying to all of us. I mean, Noelle has proven herself to be crazy powerful already. She did what everyone else has struggled to do, take down a Dark Triad member, and did so in 30 seconds flat. We didn't exactly get to sit on that victory at all because of Megecula's emergence, but she really did the damn thing, and that cannot be downplayed at all. Now, in regards to the plan of progression, not emphasize dealing with the Dark Triad first and foremost, and so Asta pulling up here makes sense. And despite his ability to actually combat Megecula's Decaying World on account of possessing no magic, it is not as if this is going to be a cakewalk for him. Megecula isn't like Nama or Lilith. She's not the type of devil to take her playtime too far, and that has been expressed with this chapter. She is calculated and obscenely tactical with a staggering intelligence, not to mention she is capable of simultaneous casting, and so this is sure to be a very difficult fight, all things considered. And the scary thing about this is that if things ever prove to be too difficult for her to handle, she could very well just kill Vanica and transition from 33% manifestation to 66% manifestation. All in all, I am really excited to see all of this play out, and I hope that you will be willing to do so alongside Plot Armor by subscribing with notifications on. We can also further the discussion in the comments or over on Twitter and Instagram at PlotArmorYT, because when it comes to bringing you some of the best Black Clover content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I'm Sliceable Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.